Welcome back, my radiant misfits, walking myths in a world of forgotten names. They call it control, but you can see the tremor in their hands when the script slips. You can hear it in the way their voices crack when silence lingers too long. Controlled chaos, they said, yet every ounce of their confidence relies on one fragile illusion, that you'll react the way they rehearsed. But you didn't. You don't. And that's the fracture. The trap wasn't sprung because you refused to step inside, and suddenly, all that orchestrated noise feels hollow. The rehearsed laughter, the staged outbursts, the artificial pressure, it collapses in on itself the moment you don't move with it. That's what terrifies them most. Not your strength, not your words, your restraint. The fact that you can watch their entire performance and remain unmoved. That kind of stillness isn't weakness, it's power, sharpened to an edge they can't see coming. Every system they built was designed for chaos that screams, chaos that thrashes, chaos that demands attention. They never once considered chaos that simply waits, chaos that studies, chaos that smiles in silence because it already knows the ending. Now their carefully balanced act is unraveling. The audience they once commanded starts noticing the slips. They start questioning the stage lights, the strings behind the puppets. And in those quiet questions, your shadow grows. Because the one who doesn't bend becomes the one everyone secretly leans toward. They can't quantify that. They can't solve it with charts or orders or distractions. You've turned their game into a mirror, reflecting every false layer back at them. And every time they try to recite their lines, the audience sees the sweat beneath the costume. That's when chaos flips. That's when control collapses, not with fire, but with silence so sharp, it cuts deeper than any storm. You've noticed it by now, haven't you? The way their eyes avoid yours when the room goes quiet. The way they shuffle papers that don't need shuffling. Click pens that don't need clicking, just to distract themselves from the weight you bring without a word. That's the thing about control. It doesn't survive under observation. And you see everything. Their chaos was meant to be staged, curated, digestible, loud enough to scare the masses, polished enough to look intentional. But when you stand there, motionless, unbothered, the act fractures. The spotlight turns harsh. Suddenly their controlled chaos doesn't look like brilliance anymore. It looks like desperation dressed in noise, and it eats at them. Because deep down, they know control is fragile. It only works on the willing. It demands belief. Once someone stops believing, once someone calls the bluff without even speaking, the whole illusion shakes. That's what you did. You didn't argue. You didn't rage. You just stopped participating. And that choice alone was the stone that cracked their glass tower. Now they whisper in corners. They rewrite plans late at night. They add more locks to doors that were never truly closed. But every new move exposes them further, because their strategy wasn't built to handle you. It was built to herd the predictable, and you've never been predictable. The truth is, chaos can be controlled, but evolution cannot. And your mind, restless, precise, unbending, is evolution itself. That's why they can't solve you. You're not playing the game they designed. You're rewriting the rules by ignoring them, and in that refusal, their grip weakens, their order crumbles. You don't even need to make a move. Just stand, just breathe, just think. Because every second you exist outside their frame is another second their system exposes itself as hollow. And sooner or later, everyone else will see it too. Watch the room change its breathing. It's subtle at first, a head that doesn't turn away, a handshake that lingers, a laugh that ends early. Then it becomes obvious. The audience stops applauding on cue and starts listening for you. That shift is everything, because once observers stop performing and start judging, the puppet masters lose their power. They built a spectacle. You became the unaddressed question in every seat. People want truth more than they want comfort. They only pretend otherwise until they see a person who refuses to lie for them. And when that person stands still while the chaos performs, the crowd feels the dissonance. They begin to cross-check their loyalties. Who offered substance? Who offered smoke and mirrors? The answer settles like dust. The one who wouldn't play the part. Loyalty is currency, and currency moves towards safety. What looks like bravery from you looks like a lifeline to them, a real option in a market full of counterfeit promises. They start to reallocate their faith quietly. A saved endorsement here, a withheld invitation there, a cautious question in the hallway. These micro shifts accumulate into something irreversible. Influence doesn't flip overnight. It migrates, cell by calculated cell. The old leaders misread it as fickleness. They mistake movement for betrayal. But it's not betrayal. It's supply and demand. People demand reliability. You supply it. Their chants sound hollow because the audience no longer believes the script. They want less theater and more truth. That hunger is contagious. It spreads faster than any staged clap. It becomes the real signal networks and contracts respond to. And here's the decisive bit. The more they try to manufacture loyalty, the clearer the difference becomes. Their efforts read as panic. Your silence reads as judgment. Their noise becomes the proof of their insecurity. Your stillness becomes the measure everyone else uses to decide who deserves their attention. The mapmakers drew their routes and expected the crowd to follow. Instead, the crowd rewrote the map by following you. Now they whisper in corners. They rewrite plans late at night. They add more locks to doors that were never truly closed. But every new move exposes them further, because their strategy wasn't built to handle you. It was built to herd the predictable, and you've never been predictable. The truth is, chaos can be controlled, but evolution cannot. And your mind, restless, precise, unbending, is evolution itself. That's why they can't solve you. You're not playing the game they designed. You're rewriting the rules by ignoring them, and in that refusal, their grip weakens, their order crumbles. You don't even need to make a move. Just stand, just breathe, just think. Because every second you exist outside their frame is another second their system exposes itself as hollow, and sooner or later everyone else will see it too. Their confidence was always a mask. You can see it now. Slipping at the edges, they built their empire on posture, loud gestures, grand speeches, elaborate blueprints that looked unshakable until someone simply refused to nod along. And that refusal, your refusal, was the match they never accounted for. Panic doesn't always scream. Sometimes it hides in overcorrection. You'll notice them doubling down on the same failed moves. Longer speeches, louder commands, tighter schedules. They push harder on the levers because they can't accept that the machine itself is broken. They call it discipline. You recognize it as fear, and the irony, the more they scramble, the more they reveal. Every new lock on a door screams vulnerability. Every extra guard signals weakness. Every desperate attempt to reassert control is proof that control was already lost. What they think looks like order now looks like collapse in slow motion. Meanwhile, you don't even need to move. Your calm is the counter-strike, because calm is louder than chaos when the crowd is watching. They see the difference. One side sweating, shouting, clinging to crumbling rules. The other side standing silent, steady, unbothered. It doesn't take long for people to decide which looks more like power. That's why they hate you. Not for what you've done, but for what you refuse to do. You won't play your part in their theater. You won't validate their performance. And without your reaction, their entire script loses meaning. This is the fracture they can't seal. The realization that all along, their control depended on your participation. And now that you've withdrawn it, they're exposed, vulnerable, transparent. The game didn't change because you struck harder. It changed because you stopped striking at all. and nothing terrifies them more than the silence that follows. Silence is a strange kind of storm. To them it looks like nothing. No rebuttal, no reaction, no desperate attempt to claw back ground. But to everyone else watching, it's deafening. It whispers of certainty. It signals confidence. It broadcasts the one truth they can't survive. You're not even worth a word. See, their game runs on noise. They thrive on distraction, on pulling you into arguments, on forcing you to defend yourself against accusations they invented. They never needed to win. They just needed you locked in the ring, swinging at shadows, wasting breath. But when you stopped, when you let their words fall flat in the air, you drained the only fuel they had left, and suddenly the room starts listening differently. People lean in, not to hear their next excuse, but to feel the weight of your silence. The absence of your response becomes louder than every claim they've ever shouted. Their chaos drowns itself out, and you, without lifting a hand, become the center of gravity. It erodes them from the inside, because deep down, they always knew your calm was the one thing they couldn't script around. They could counter your rage. They could twist your words. They could spin your mistakes into stories. But silence? Silence is unspinnable. Silence forces them to face themselves without your energy to manipulate. And here's the twist. In silence, you don't just win. You erase their narrative. You erase their power. You erase the illusion that they were ever in control. That's why they call it controlled chaos. They believed if they could keep you dizzy long enough, you'd forget where the ground was. But your stillness, your clarity, has shown the world the floor was never shaking. It was their act all along. And now, every eye that once believed them is starting to believe you. Not because you shouted louder, but because you didn't need to shout at all. This is where the rot begins. Not from outside, but from the inside. The very people who helped build the act start to mutter in corners. They were architects once. Now they shuffle like terrified clerks. Loyalty fractures, because loyalty is practical. It follows outcomes, not slogans. When outcomes slip, excuses follow quickly. People who once smiled in unison now clear their throats before speaking your name. Watch the micro-movements. A senior aide who used to defend the plan now offers vague statements about reassessing. Partner who once pledged public support suddenly steps back to focus on priorities. Those are not coincidences. They're calculated retreats. The ones closest to the machine see the smoke before the audience does. They smell the failure, and they know it will scorch anything tied to the blueprint. They start to hedge. Private messages ask cautious questions. Old friends suggest quiet dinners. Advisors draft contingency memos that read like exits. You don't have to root them out. Their survival instinct does it for you. They look for a safe shore, and in this new tide, that shore has your name on it. And as insiders flinch, the public narrative collapses faster. When defenders wobble, critics don't need much else. The chorus of certainty turns into a chorus of doubt. Subtle at first, then loud. Their spokespeople pump out talking points, but the lines sound rehearsed because they are. And rehearsed words don't heal broken faith. The catastrophe for them is simple. Movements built on shared theater crumble when the troupe abandons stage. That momentum was communal. Once it fragments, everything else is cosmetic. Deals evaporate, alliances shift, and reputations bleed. The very people who once fortified, the illusion now become the scatter whose speed it's unraveling. You watch, quiet. You don't hunt them, you outlast them. Time, not spectacle, becomes your ally. Every private retreat, every furtive call, every tiny recalibration inside their ranks is a seal on their fate. They whisper your name not to curse it, but to test if it will anchor their next move. And in that test, your stability becomes their litmus. This is where control ends. Not in a headline, but in a hesitant text thread. Not in a riot, but in a scheduled resignation. Not with a shout, but with quiet footsteps moving away from the stage. Their empire falls because those who kept it standing simply step off, one by one, until the whole structure collapses under the weight of its own unreliability. And you remain the one constant, the only predictable factor in a room that prided itself on control. They thought they could purchase loyalty with influence. They discovered too late that true allegiance follows truth, not fabrication. The insiders leave, and with their leave, so does the lie. Outwardly, they still posture, still dress the part, still gather in their carefully staged halls. But look closer. Every gesture is stiff, every sentence rehearsed. They're not leaders anymore. They're actors, scrambling to remember lines as the script burns in their hands. The eyes give it away first. Watch them, darting, restless, searching for reassurance in every nod, every faint clap. They know the applause is hollow now, a habit more than conviction. And then comes the silence, the kind that lingers after someone speaks and no one answers. Once their words commanded reactions, now they echo. Once their decrees sparked movement, now they hang in the air like smoke, heavy, suffocating, unconvincing. That silence is not empty, it's judgment. Every second of it screams the truth. Faith is gone. You don't need to expose them. Their own presence does it. They stand on stages built for certainty, and the uncertainty in their faces betrays them more than any evidence could. People read it. The crowd always reads it. Authority isn't destroyed by arguments. It's destroyed by hesitation, a pause longer than comfort, a glance too nervous, a tone too brittle, and they are full of those now. The map they clutched like scripture is useless, not because you tore it up, but because reality refuses to bend to it. Their compass spins, their milestones vanish. Their perfect plan looks suddenly like scribbles in the dirt. And while they sweat, while they fumble, you don't move. You stay calm, still, watching. The contrast is everything. That calm of yours becomes a mirror. In it, they see themselves unraveling. They try harder to mask it, force the smile, sharpen the tone, tighten their grip. But desperation is transparent, and desperation spreads like a virus. Their followers catch it, their allies taste it, their opponents feed on it. Suddenly, the once unbreakable wall looks like paper left out in the rain. This is how empires collapse. Not with a bang, but with a gradual unmasking. One slip, one silence, one hollow cheer at a time. And every second it happens, your shadow grows heavier in the room. You don't fight for the spotlight. They hand it to you by failing to hold it themselves. Because in a world that worships control, the calmest presence becomes the loudest force. And tonight, that presence is yours. It starts with one voice, not the loudest, not the most powerful, just one who's tired of pretending. They step away, subtle at first, a polite disagreement, a refusal to clap on cue. But that tiny fracture is enough, because courage is contagious. Once one breaks rank, others find the strength to follow. And suddenly, the silence that haunted their halls is pierced by something louder. Dissent. The cracks they ignored now split open like fault lines. Allies they once considered untouchable begin to vanish. One resignation letter, one sudden absence, one carefully worded statement that doesn't quite defend them. The fortress they built out of loyalty becomes a trail of exits. Every departure echoes louder than the words left behind. Crowds notice. Spectators notice. The faithful start asking questions they never dared whisper before. If they're leaving, what do they know? What truth is hidden? What failure is coming? Doubt spreads faster than rumor. And once doubt takes hold, it doesn't fade. It reshapes everything. This is where the story turns. Not because you raised your voice, but because you didn't need to. Your silence created a vacuum. Their chaos filled it. Their collapse scripted it. And the world read it for what it was. Proof that control was always an illusion. And here's the real twist. The ones leaving aren't just abandoning them. They're orbiting toward you, quietly, cautiously, but inevitably, because the mind craves stability, and you are the only still point in a collapsing storm. They watch your calm, your refusal to flinch, your unwillingness to scramble, and they see something rare: certainty. The game no longer belongs to those who wrote the map. It belongs to the one who made the map useless simply by existing. That's you. Every step they take away from the collapsing order is a step toward your gravity. You don't chase them. You don't beckon. You don't need to. The pull is natural, inevitable, irreversible. What was once their table is now your audience. And without lifting a finger, you've turned defection into allegiance. At first, the exits were whispers, letters sent in private, meetings skipped, hands withdrawn from the handshake. But now, it's public. The same people who once defended them with fervor now refuse to even mention their name. The cameras catch it. The headlines sharpen it. The narrative flips overnight. Suddenly, what was once unquestionable becomes controversial. What was once stable becomes toxic. This is the avalanche, not one stone falling, but 1,000 at once. Not because they all discovered truth at the same time, but because fear shifted sides. Yesterday, it was dangerous to question the plan. Today, it's dangerous to defend it. And when survival instinct flips, so does loyalty. Crowds no longer chant. They stare. They whisper. They record. Every word spoken at their podium now sounds desperate, defensive, fragile. The empire that once roared with confidence now creaks under its own weight. The sound of collapse isn't a crash, it's the grinding of a machine that refuses to admit it's broken. And through it all, you don't raise your hand. You don't gloat. You don't even speak, because you understand something they never did. Power isn't taken. It's revealed, and right now the world is seeing, clearly, brutally, who holds it. Their perfect plan is now a case study in failure. Their map is a relic, a reminder of arrogance, a museum piece of delusion. And your presence is the explanation. Not sabotage, not betrayal, not trickery, just existence. You showed up, and the game bent around you. This is the point where history stops writing about them and starts writing about you. When collapse finally arrives, it doesn't roar, it sighs. The noise, the slogans, the posturing, all of it falls flat in a single instant of realization. The crowd no longer looks at them. Their podium is still standing. Their microphone still works, but their words don't travel. They speak, and the air rejects it. That is the cruelest silence. Not absence of sound, but absence of belief. The empire lies scattered across the floor. Not in ashes, but in fragments too small to rebuild. Their alliances are gone. Their map is torn. Their names spoken only in tones of caution or ridicule. No one fears them now. No one envies them. They've become what they feared most: irrelevant. And in that vacuum, every gaze turns toward you. Not because you demanded it, not because you begged for it, but because inevitability always claims its seat. You don't rise to applause. You rise to inevitability. They see you as the only steady line left in the chaos, the only presence that did not break, the only mind that never wavered when the storm came. That calm, that silence, that refusal to scramble, it becomes magnetic. People shift toward it, not because they understand it, but because they crave it. Their trust in systems is gone. Their trust in illusions is gone. What remains is a single figure who dismantled the script without lifting a hand. And the irony? The more they tried to hold power, the faster it slipped. The less you tried to hold it, the more it anchored itself in you. That's the paradox of control. Those who chase it, lose it. Those who embody it without seeking become its natural center. Now every eye in the room, every thought in the crowd, Every whisper in the shadows aligns with you, not because they were forced to, but because reality has rearranged itself around your presence. The map is gone. The old rules are gone. What remains is your silence, your aura, your unbroken line. That's not victory. It's inevitability. This is the moment they feared but could never stop. The turning point, where the story can no longer be reversed. The old order is not simply weakened. It's erased. Their symbols, their structures, their language, none of it holds weight anymore. People no longer ask what they will do next. They ask what you will decide. That's the clearest proof of power. When questions of future orbit only around you. And look at them now, ghosts wandering the ruins of their own empire. They clutch old titles, recite faded rules, but no one listens. The world doesn't wait for yesterday's echoes. It hungers for the presence that survived the storm. That presence is yours. Your rise is not celebrated with fireworks. It's acknowledged with silence. The heavy, undeniable silence of recognition. Even your enemies feel it. They may not admit it, may not speak it aloud, but in their private thoughts, they know you've crossed into untouchable ground. This is no longer about disruption. This is no longer about survival. This is establishment. You have become the axis around which the room spins. Every alliance recalibrates in your direction. Every strategy is drafted with your shadow in mind. Every step they take is measured against the possibility of your next move. You didn't demand loyalty. You didn't beg for respect. You simply existed so powerfully, so unshaken, that the world had no choice but to bend. And now it has bent fully. The old table is overturned, the old map useless, and the old rulers nothing more than footnotes. The new chapter begins not with their voice, but with your silence. And in that silence, everyone hears the same truth. The center of gravity has shifted. It will never shift back.